Hi, welcome to the Presser Foot and our latest installment of Tech Tips. Today we're going to talk about overlocking with heavier threads or different threads. We have these wonderful new air thread overlockers that are available for us, and they do make threading a breeze. But some threads are either too big to go through the air channels or too open and fuzzy so they don't get sucked through the tubes the way they should. So they need alternate ways of being threaded. So that's what I'm going to show you today. And at the end, I will show you how I thread a regular serger that is not an air thread with a heavier thread or with one of the poly yarn threads that are available on the market. So let's get started. First off, I have the 890 and the 850 here in front of me. The major difference between the two is not only the screen, but the 890 is a chain and cover stitch machine as well, and the 850 is an overlock only. And that will make a difference when we get down below in threading paths, and I'll show you. So these are what the machines look like when they're opened, and you'll notice that there is a major difference here. We have a third hole that is not available here. But what we're going to be focusing on is this piece right here, and it is identical in both machines. But on this machine, we will not use the bottom hole because there is no looper that will be behind it. So, and in this case, because we are not using chain and cover, we will ignore this bottom hole. So the top two holes are the ones we're going to focus on when we have to bypass the air tubes. But first, let's do a poly yarn, which can go through the air tubes. It just needs a little help getting there. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start threading in the normal thread paths when I'm using the poly yarns. The poly yarns are great in that they are very, very soft. They are very stretchy. When you stretch them, they become very thin. But the nice thing about them is when they release inside the stitch, they cover better. So they make a beautiful rolled hem, but they're also very soft if you want to use it as the looper threads for children's clothing or garments that are going to see a lot of abrasion. So first thing we'll do is go ahead and come up through the top and put it through the back clip and come down. As with all sewing machines, you want to make sure that the foot is up so that the tension discs are open in order to allow us to thread. Now with the air threads, we need to get the air threading mechanism in place. And so you'll simply turn this tube. If the machine is not in the correct place to engage the tubes, all you'll need to do with this machine is let the stepping motors come into place, and they will lock in place. So all you do is step on the pedal and the machine will do the rest for you. And when it is ready to go, it will actually stop. So now we have our threading tubes that are engaged. The problem is if I were to try and use the threader to pull this through, it won't grab it. There's just too much air inside this thread. So what I do is I make a cheat. I take a regular piece of my thread and I double it. So this is double this length. So I have a loop at the very, very end. So when I have the edges together and making sure I hang on to the loop, because if I don't, it'll shoot all the way through, I will now put the thread in the threader, get my green thread out of the way, until it comes through. And now I have my loop here, and I can use this loop to transfer this thread through the system. So I will take my end of thread, I will put it inside my loop, and I do leave quite a tail. So if it starts to pull backwards, it has a ways before it comes out of the loop. And then I can pull this until you see the green come out of the looper. And now this is ready to go. This is now in place. I can disengage my threaders and continue with my sewing. If I needed to do this in both loopers, I would do the same procedure, only using the red hole for the lower looper instead of the blue hole for the upper looper. So that's how you can handle these airy threads that can go through these tubes. But what about a thread that is too big to go through the tube, but it can still go through the eye of the looper? And we have some of those beautiful threads. Pearl Crown Rayon is one that comes to mind immediately. It makes a beautiful decorative edge, but it is too thick to be able to use this method to pull through this loop. And it is also too thick to use the air threader to send it through as well. So we have another way that we can do that. Now, another thing that we have to bear in mind, because Pearl Crown Rayon and heavy rayon yarns and things like that are heavier, they will have problems getting through some of your areas up here. So there is a decorative thread guide that is available. It is L25. It works on the 850, the 860, and the 890. It's very easy to install. It's just a small wire piece that looks like this. You connect it at the front and then snap it down and it holds. And this gives me a secondary guide rather than the guide that's in the back of the machine for me to run these bulkier threads through. So we've got that in there. We're going to go ahead and do our thread in. Again, we are going in the tension disc. Our foot is up. We need to engage our threading tubes so they're ready to go. And once again, I will use my cheater. However, this time I'm going to let my cheater go a little farther. I'm going to hold on to my loop, have my double ends, put it over my blue hole, let it thread until I can see it. Now I'm going to let go and I am going to retract my threader. My threader will let me see my white thread back in there, and I am going to pull until I can see the loop. Now, if I hold on to that and use my tweezers, I can reach in there and pull my loop out this way. So now I have my loop here. It is not going through this part of the air thread system. We are going to instead use the alternative thread guide, which is right here. And because I am putting this in the upper looper, I am going to want to use the hole that is on the top and closest to the machine. If you look on the body of the machine, it shows a blue triangle, which shows you that it belongs to the blue path, which is the upper looper. I will take my rayon, thread it through my alternative threading system. Once again, put it in my lasso and leave about 4 to 5 inches so that when I pull this through, it comes through. And I now have my upper looper threaded with my red thread. As anytime you're using a different thread rather than standard overlocking thread, this being such a bigger weight, you want to do a test sample to make sure that your stitch length is appropriate for the size thread that you have. If you have a different kind of serger, not an air thread serger, there are a few things, tricks and tips that you can use in order to help you thread these threads that are a little bit more challenging to put through a looper. Because sergers have bigger eyes on their loopers, they are easier to thread the eye than it is actually to thread than a needle. For instance, this poly yarn would be almost impossible to get through the eye of a needle, but yet you can get it through the eye of a looper. So what we're going to do, again, make sure our foot is up so that our tension disc is open. We have our thread through our back, right, and we're coming into the system to thread. We're going to follow the thread path that we would follow for any other regular thread. And when we get to the looper, we can try. Your best friend with a serger is actually a good pair of tweezers. I prefer long tweezers because they can let me get farther into the machine than I can get with a shorter pair of tweezers. A lot of sergers now actually come with tweezers in the door. I keep those there for emergencies, and I keep longer pairs in my drawers so that I have a long set to be able to use. So you can try and thread the upper eye with just using a pair of tweezers. You can use a little spit, though I know that's not politically correct, and make the fuzzy yarn collapse down on itself, and you might be able to get that through the eye of the looper. You can do the lasso trick like we showed with the thread, but what I found is much easier is simply this. A lot of sergers or overlocks will come with a threader, and it is usually a very small piece of silver wire that forms a loop like this. Unfortunately, the minute that silver wire jumps out of where it's supposed to be stored and ends up on the floor, you will never find it again. The nice thing about this, which is a dental floss threader, you can pick them up at Walgreens in the 10 and 20 packs and keep them in your drawer. And if they do get dropped on the floor, because they are typically bright blue, it is easier to see them. So I would go ahead and use the loop, the lasso, the same way I did with my other, but then I would take the threader part of it and go right through the eye of my looper. Then I can reach back and grab it with my finger and pull it. And now I have the thread through the eye of the looper. This also works with the heavier threads, and you can typically run the threads all the way through. Occasionally with some overlockers, you will need a decorative thread tension bypass. All of them are different, so I couldn't show you what they particularly were, but sometimes if you are having trouble getting the tension to work with your heavier threads, you may need a decorative bypass. I hope this helps and helps you enjoy your overlocker to its fullest capacity. Come in and see us sometime. We look forward to seeing you at the presser foot. Thanks and have a great day.